All right. Hey, I'm here. You're welcome, Mr. Robinson. So, we're starting the next unit today in American History 2. The next unit is the 1920s. All right, known as the Roaring Twenties. It's also known as the Jazz Age. So different things that go on during this unit or this era. It's basically the 1920s. So it's a period of time after World War One, but before the Great Depression. Okay, so something that you got to understand before we start the unit is during, I mentioned this before, during and after major wars, the country tends to do pretty well economically. All right, so there's some post-war economic boom that happens. And so right after World War One, the country is doing pretty well. But there are some issues going on at the same time. So that's what I'm going to go over right here. Americans struggle with post-war issues. Trends. Remember that debate over the League of Nations. Some of America wanted to get in the League of Nations. A lot didn't. America ultimately did not join the League of Nations. Some of the soldiers were finding it hard to find work because remember, a lot of women had taken jobs um, in factories that men had typically had before. A lot of African Americans are more integrated now into the workforce, whereas before that didn't happen as much. So there's a little bit of racial tension going on as well. And then you see many Americans they're responding to this by nativism, all right, or that dislike of immigrants, okay? Because remember, what do immigrants do? Why do a lot of people not favor immigrants? It's because they are against immigrants taking jobs because typically an immigrant will work for less money because they need a job. All right, they need some type of job to get economic stability, so they will work for less money than a person who's already here. And then isolationism is another. America at this time wants to stay isolated from the rest of the war and the rest of the world, and that is why they ultimately decided to stay out of the League of Nations. We don't want to be involved in European affairs. This is the big thing. This is what this assignment is about. Pay very close attention. I know if I were you, I'd be paying close attention, especially if I had a teacher like you guys got. The Red Scare. This is important. So there's the first Red Scare. There's another Red Scare after the Second World War. But it's this fear of communism, and in some cases, an overt fear of communism. Now, me personally, I don't know what being scared is like. Okay, but I don't know what having fear is. I'm joking, guys. All right, seriously, I've been. I guess I've been scared before, but this Red Scare is being scared of communism and of being fearful of that communism was going to overtake America and overtake and start to run rampant in America. Because you remember with that Russian Revolution, the communists had overthrown the Russian monarchy, and it's starting to spread now. It's starting to spread to other countries as well. 70,000 radicals formed a party in the United States. Now, that's not a huge amount, but there was a party with pro communist sentiment in the United States. So, what does the government do? Well, the Attorney General, okay, head of Justice Department, A. Mitchell Palmer, that's the guy's name. Him, along with the head of the FBI, or Federal Bureau of Investigation, one J. Edgar Hoover, they start to track down and hunt these suspected communists, socialists, anarchists. So they're going after them. They're basically persecuting them. Okay, and so they're trying to be done with these communists because America's scared of. They're scared that communism is going to take over in America. So here's just an example. These two guys, the two Italian immigrants, immigrant anarchists at the same time. So they got a couple strikes against them. Remember, America stands for democracy. Anarchy is the absence of government in a sense, and also they're immigrants. So they are charged with murder and robbery. There's alibis. Okay, they say, look, they have these alibi. An alibi is basically something saying that they weren't at the store that was robbed. There's only circumstantial evidence, so it's not concrete evidence. But yet they're convicted and then they're executed, put to death. Nikolai Sacco, and Bartholomew Vanzetti. So this is just an example of some of this anti-communist sentiment that is growing in America at the time. And so limiting immigration. Remember, there have been a wide or a large amount of immigrants that have been coming to America during that gilded and progressive era, from basically 1890 to 1920. Remember that Unit 2 project I had you guys work on, where you had to look as if you were an immigrant coming to America during that time? Well, now America, because it's becoming more nativist, they're trying to limit immigrants, and they believe that in a lot of cases, these immigrants, they believe because you're an immigrant, you're a communist. All right, that's a stipulation that was tied, not a stipulation, a stigma that was tied to a lot of the immigrants, and that's why you have a lot of anti-immigrant sentiment that's going on. So with the rise of this, you have the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. Now, people always think of the Ku Klux Klan as an institution or a group that is mainly targeting African Americans, and historically it has been to some degree. But during this time, the 1920s, we see a large increase in the membership of the Ku Klux Klan because not only are they targeting African Americans, but now they're targeting immigrants, communists, okay, even people who are deemed to be pro-evolutionary, okay. So they're targeting Jews as well. So any person that's basically not white or Anglo-Saxon Protestant, the Ku Klux Klan is targeting them. All right. So government. This is an example of something the government does. They pass an emergency quota act, which basically what it did was it established the maximum number of people who could come from certain countries. Most of these countries are predominantly Jewish regions. Now, how has that been paralleled today? Well, today there is a travel ban or a quota in some sense of people coming from certain countries into America today. Now, where are those countries at today? Don't worry, I'll wait. Okay, well, I know. They're in the Middle East. So America doesn't want a lot of people coming into America from the Middle East. Why? Well, because that is where the origination of the 9/11 attacks happened, from the Middle East. And so a lot of these predominantly Muslim countries, in the sense today, have restrictions on people coming to America from those countries. So it's a little different, but same thing. They didn't want people coming from Eastern Europe because that was a communist area at the time. Okay, I'm going to go through the Harding presidency real quick, but your assignment's not on the Harding presidency, but you will need to know some of this. Warren G. Harding promises America a return to normalcy, meaning a return to how America was before the war. Now, this a lot of people like this. They wanted this return to normalcy. So guess what? He won the election. What he did, he had a Washington Naval Conference where they basically decided to disarm. A lot of major powers decided to disarm. And then this at the bottom has to go with tariffs. So he raised tariffs. Now, what did tariffs do? Tariffs, again, they promote American business. He's a pro-business president for the United States. And something in America, another thing America did was they loaned money to Germany. Well, Germany, because they were in massive debt, they had to pay Britain and France, and then France and Britain turned around and paid the United States. So really, that has to do with the Treaty of Versailles and Germany having to pay these war reparations. but the United States is kind of making money out of this as well. Now, Harding, his presidency, this may be on the test. Um, there was a lot of scandal going on during his presidency. So there's something called a Teapot Dome scandal where one of his cabinet members, the Secretary of Interior, was leasing government land to private oil companies to get a kickback, get some money out of that. He was found. He received $400,000 and was found guilty of bribery. So if you use your government office to make for personal gain, that is corruption, and so that's where scandal starts to take place during Harding's presidency. And he dies in office. 1923, he died in office, and at the time he was thought of. A lot of people still liked him, even though some of these scandals are going on, but it didn't come out till a few years later about how corrupt his administration was. So one thing I want you to associate with him is scandal as well as the return to normalcy. All right, so that's all I'm going to go over for today. All right, if you have any questions, I do want to say this. Later this week, I'm going to be trying to hold virtual conferences with everybody who failed the first 9 weeks. So stand by for an email and a time to where we can have a virtual meeting about that if in fact you did not pass the first 9 weeks.